Really excited to be here. Queen of Clean, that's the first time I've heard that. Thank you, Michael. I'm so excited. I always get to go after Michael, which he really gets everyone real hyped up. So, as you guys know, Beauty Counter was built on a foundation of science. Science that called question around the exposure to everyday harmful chemicals that were being used in the products we were putting on our skin, and science that called people like Greg Renfrew to come in and disrupt the beauty industry. And so we've been working with and consulting with the top researchers and clinicians since the foundation of Beauty Counter. And they've helped advise us on formulating and creating the Never List, creating our ingredient selection process. And we thought, you know what, it's time to make it official. And so we went out and we asked the creme de la creme in the scientific research community and clinicians who are practicing in relevant fields of medicine to say, do you want to formally join Beauty Counter Science Advisory Council? And the response was amazing. And so I'm excited to debut for you today. Just yesterday, we had the inaugural meeting of Beauty Counter's Science Advisory Council. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about who some of these people are. You can head onto Beauty Counter's blog and read bios about the fields of research that all of these leaders have been in. Dr. Leo Trisande, some of you know him as the author of Fatter, Sicker, and Poorer, but perhaps he's most well known in the research community for being one of the most prolific people to publish papers looking at the links of chemicals exposure to our children's health and the impacts on the global and domestic economy. We've got Dr. Harley from Berkeley. She was the lead researcher for the Hermosa study. That's the study that looked at how when Latina teenagers switched to clean beauty products, how parabens and phthalates in their body dropped. We also have Dr. Ana Soto. She was the scientist who put on the map plasticizer chemicals. We actually didn't know that was a thing, and we didn't know plasticizers could have impacts on our hormone system until the 1980s, when her research team accidentally found how plastics were leaching through petri dishes as compared to their glass counterparts. We've got the Endocrine Society. So some of these top researchers publishing the most credible science are all a part of a professional organization called the Endocrine Society. They're based in Washington, D.C. That society actually formally joined our Science Advisory Council. And they did so because they believe in what we're doing. They did so because of our credibility of our safety program and our dedication to clean. And they did so to help advise us and push us to always do better. So like I mentioned, head to our website, head to our blog, read a little bit about the areas that all of these people have been focusing, and they're gonna always be pushing us to do better. So let's take a step back. Let's go back to 2014. Beauty Counter had been around for about a year. And if you guys think about the marketplace, we know that Greg saw an opportunity and a white space. There were varying beauty brands of both price and clean. And as we know, that wasn't a thing back then. There were a few natural beauty brands. But really, we kind of dominated and owned and created that space. Fast forward 6 years, and it looks a little more crowded, doesn't it? And that's really a good thing. That is part of what Greg set out to do. She wanted to transform not just one company, but an entire industry. And so this type of noise and competition in the marketplace is something that we should, rather than feeling threatened by, really embrace it and say, okay, this is the new way of doing beauty. All beauty should be clean beauty. But it also begs the question, what makes Beauty Counter different? And many of you have asked me these questions as we've seen new players in the marketplace. And so we have noticed that the Never List is being copied, as Greg mentioned this morning. Our ingredient selection process really was revolutionary at the time. But we know that our approach to safety is so much more than those two things. Safety is more than banning ingredients. And so our comprehensive approach to safety is kind of hard to describe, right? And so what we've done over the last 12 months is we've put together all of our rules of engagement. So both for our formulation team, who you just met, and all of our contract manufacturers. And we created, and today I'm unveiling for the very first time, Beauty Counter's Blueprint for Clean. So what is it? It is 12 pillars, the rules of the road, as I mentioned, of what it takes to bring a Beauty Counter product to market. So I'm going to briefly breeze through the 12, and then we're going to dive in a little bit deeper in 6 of them. Unparalleled safety screening. You know that's what makes us special. We've been dedicated to ingredient transparency since we first launched. Responsible sourcing. sustainable packaging, and now we're looking at environmental footprinting, understanding what the full environmental impacts are of our entire manufacturing and trying to reduce those impacts over time. It wouldn't be Beautycounter if we also didn't focus and have really high standards for product performance. We have a quality assurance program, which isn't a guarantee in the beauty industry. We do trace contaminant and heavy metal testing, which we're gonna dive into a little bit deeper. And of course, our formulas and our approach to preservatives is innovative. We wanna stay ahead of the curve and we exceed all regulatory standards. We have an industry-leading supplier code of conduct, and we are Leaping Bunny certified. So all 12 of these combined is our comprehensive approach to clean and how we are going above and beyond. Let's take a little bit of a deeper dive. Unparalleled safety screening. So when we set out, it's not just about the never list. When we set out to actually approve a formula, long before we start mixing ingredients together, we go through a screening process. And what we do is we look for and we screen against 23 health and environmental endpoints. We do so using 17 of the best databases in the scientific community. And so what these databases do is they basically make sure that we are looking and seeing every single science paper that has been published on a particular ingredient for these 23 health and environmental endpoints. And our dedication to safety screening is exemplified in our counter timeline, which was EWG verified, the third party that basically says you are meeting really high standards of safety. So what makes us the leaders in clean? We are screening against 23 health and environmental endpoints, setting the strictest safety standards in the beauty industry. Next, ingredient transparency. Transparent is one of the 5 values at our corporate offices, and it's certainly a guiding behavior and something we always charge towards when it comes to our formulations. Since we launched, we fully disclose all fragrance ingredients, all ingredients in our formulas, and now we're taking it even a step further. So what does this mean? If you look at our counter timeline, for example, where applicable, we are listing EU allergens. So what does that mean? In the European Union, consumers are afforded more transparency around fragrances than they are here in the United States. And so Beautycounter is pushing the envelope once again, and we are listing EU allergens. So I want to tell you what that actually means. If you think of a pure essential oil, let's just say a drop of rose oil, for example. Even though that's a pure drop of rose oil, chemically speaking, there are different subcomponents of that rose oil. And some of those subcomponents can be allergenic to sensitive populations, especially those people undergoing chemo and different treatments. And so we want to make sure that people have access to that information. So it's a level of transparency that is unparalleled and it's not commonly seen in the domestic North American market. So what makes us the leaders in clean? We are going above and beyond and fully disclosing all ingredients, including fragrances and even subcomponents of fragrances where possible. Responsibly sourced raw materials. So we're tackling key strategic supply chains that are critical to clean beauty. So we want to focus on the safety of ingredients for us when we use the products. But what about safety for the people in our supply chain? If we find an ingredient that is safe to use, there aren't that many tools in our toolbox because we have such a restricted never list. And if we know that there are labor issues associated with that, we want to use our business power where possible. And so we're tackling vanilla, the vanilla supply chain, palm where possible, and of course, as you guys have seen, our work on mica. So what makes us the leaders in clean? We are flying all across the world, and we are on track to be the first beauty brand to have physically visited every mine where our mica is sourced by the end of this year. So it's not enough just to create clean formulas. You want to put it in packaging that's not going to leach. And we know this is a really big issue in the industry. So we have a never list, as Michael had mentioned, for our packaging materials. We want to do the best we can to screen out any sort of questionable ingredients to make sure that our clean standards hold true even after a product comes to market. We have upped our transparency game, putting easy to read recycling labels on the product so you actually know how to properly dispose of them when you're using the product. And there are not many guarantees I can make in my business. I feel like everything is nuanced and kind of complicated. But the nice thing about transitioning to glass is it's one of the few materials that we can have a 0% chance of plasticizers leaching into the product. So what makes us the leaders in clean? We are not only screening packaging components to make sure they're safe for your health, we are designing packaging for the future to make sure that everything doesn't automatically go in the landfill. Formula and preservative innovation. You just heard from our innovation team. I mean, this is what really makes us special at Beautycounter. We have an eye towards innovation in our formulas, and that's why they work. We're also trying to be innovative in our approach to preservatives. And so if you see our countermatch line, for example, we are testing out how packaging could help reduce the need or use of certain preservatives and how formulas could self-preserve themselves. So what makes us the leaders in clean? We have a full-time green chemist on staff who's trying to find different ways for us to preserve our formulas for the future. Quality assurance program, I mentioned this. This is the stuff that happens behind the scenes that you don't often think about. In the beauty industry, there are not high standards for a QA program. And so what we're doing is we're taking some of the best practices from food and pharma and trying to push the beauty industry to do better. So what I think makes this really interesting and what makes us the leaders in clean is that we worked with a manufacturer, for example, to change out some of the tubing on their manufacturing fill line. And the reason for that is that they have been using food-grade vinyl that was approved by the FDA, so it had a good stamp of approval. The problem is that vinyl is notorious for leaching phthalates into products. And so when we helped that manufacturer retrofit their tubing, not only were Beautycounter's products made safer, so were every other beauty brand that was using that manufacturer. It's amazing the kind of small things that can have a really large impact, right? So our trace contaminant and heavy metal testing program, which I'm really excited about. One thing that you may not know is that 100% of all of our raw materials are screened for 3 common never list ingredients. So parabens, formaldehyde, and phthalates. They're on the never list. We'll never formulate with them, but we want to screen and test all of our raw materials because they are common contaminants that can either happen in how an ingredient is preserved or how it's transported or through the manufacturing process. One thing is we always talk about how the European Union is far ahead of us, and yes, in many ways they are. But here's one area where the EU is behind the game. There are 153 colorants that are allowed to be used in color cosmetics in the European Union. In the United States, under the FDA, it's 65, and at Beautycounter, we only allow 18 colorants to be used in our color products. So what makes us the leaders in clean? We are the only brand that I know that is testing every single batch of color cosmetics before they head to the market and then publishing those results on our website for all to see. So our blueprint for clean is our comprehensive approach to safety. And I know so many of you have sent me questions, or you're feeling kind of panicked when you get a question from someone that's saying, oh, this brand is saying this about us, or they're saying they're cleaner, or how many banned ingredients, how does our never list compare to their list? And I want you guys to take a deep breath when you get those questions, and I want you to respond with confidence and sincerity to say, you know what, I can't speak to that brand safety program, but I tell you what, I'm so glad they've joined the clean beauty movement. I can tell you about what we're doing and why we're the leaders in clean. We screen every single ingredient meticulously, looking out for the health of you and your family. So if you care about protecting the health for you and your family, then Beautycounter is the brand for you. We carefully look at all of the materials and packaging, not only designing products for the future for sustainability purposes, but trying to make sure that your family is safe from the packaging and unwanted chemicals are not being leached into it. If you care about sustainability and you're concerned about plastic pollution, then Beautycounter is the brand for you. We have traveled all around the world, physically seeing firsthand what the working conditions are for people that are bringing ingredients to our products. So if you care about human rights, then Beautycounter is the brand for you. And finally, we advocate in state legislatures in Washington, D.C., and in Parliament, asking and advocating for laws to protect absolutely everyone, to make sure that clean beauty is a reality across all of North America. So if you want to be an advocate for change, then Beautycounter is the brand for you. I just think it's really exciting as we're in this time and age and all these brands are exploding for us to have a tremendous impact in these one-on-one conversations that we have every single day. The blueprint for clean is how Beautycounter is not only owning and claiming clean, as Greg talked about before, it's how we're going beyond clean. And I thank all of you because the work that